The legend of Desperation Hill was one that parents told their children to keep them in line, a chilling tale whispered in the dead of night. But for those who dared to investigate, it was much more than just a story. The hill, shrouded in perpetual mist, was home to an abandoned orphanage, a decaying monument to sorrow and madness. Within its crumbling walls, the specter known only as Mama awaited her next victims. Catherine and David, a young couple from the city, were passionate about exploring haunted places and documenting their experiences. Their YouTube channel had grown in popularity, each video pushing them deeper into the realm of the supernatural. One night, as they browsed for their next destination, they stumbled upon an obscure, poorly dubbed film titled, Mama, filme completo dublado, filme de drama seseo filmalier indica. The thumbnail showed a gaunt, shadowy figure lurking behind the silhouette of an old orphanage. Intrigued, they watched the film. The story was simple but eerie, a group of orphans left to fend for themselves after the sudden disappearance of the caretakers. The children spoke of a malevolent presence they called Mama, a spectral figure that haunted the orphanage, preying on their fears. The final scene showed the orphanage in flames, the children's screams blending with the sinister laughter of Mama. Convinced that the film was based on true events, Catherine and David decided to investigate the orphanage on Desperation Hill. They packed their gear and set off, documenting their journey for their audience. As they drove into the countryside, the landscape grew increasingly desolate. The road wound through dense, twisted forests and up the steep incline of Desperation Hill. A heavy fog blanketed the area, muffling sounds and obscuring their view. When they finally reached the orphanage, it stood as a decrepit husk, looming ominously against the overcast sky. "Are you ready for this?" David asked, his voice tinged with nervous excitement. Catherine nodded, gripping the camera tightly. "Let's find out if the legend is true." They entered the orphanage cautiously, the floorboards creaking under their weight. The air was thick with dust and decay, and an unsettling silence pervaded the place. They explored room after room, documenting the derelict surroundings. Faded photographs and crumbling toys hinted at the lives once lived here, but there was no sign of the children. In the main hall, Catherine noticed a peculiar symbol etched into the floor, a circle with strange, arcane markings. As she bent down to examine it, a cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing their lights. "David, did you feel that?" she whispered, her breath visible in the sudden chill. Before he could respond, a soft, sing-song voice echoed through the hall, "Mama's here." Panic set in. They fumbled to relight their torches, the darkness pressing in around them. When the lights flickered back on, they were no longer alone. Shadowy figures stood at the edges of the room, eyes glowing with malevolence. The orphans, their faces twisted with sorrow and rage. Catherine and David backed away slowly, heartbeats hammering in their chests. The figures remained still, watching with hollow eyes. "We need to leave, now," David urged. They turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The temperature dropped further, and a low, guttural growl reverberated through the walls. Mama was coming. Desperation clawed at them. They dashed through the halls, seeking an exit, but every door was locked, every window sealed. The orphanage was a labyrinth, twisting and turning upon itself. They stumbled into a nursery, the air thick with the scent of rot. A crib stood in the center, rocking gently despite the absence of a breeze. A lullaby began to play, eerie and dissonant. Catherine approached the crib, compelled by a force she couldn't resist. Inside lay a doll, its porcelain face cracked and eyes glinting with an unnatural light. As she reached out, the doll's mouth moved, whispering, "Mama is coming for you." A shadow fell over Catherine. She turned to see a figure towering above her, its form indistinct and shrouded in darkness. Long, spindly fingers reached out, and she felt an icy grip around her throat. David screamed and lunged at the figure, his hands passing through it as if it were smoke. Mama's grip tightened, lifting Catherine off the ground. Her vision blurred, darkness encroaching from the edges. Summoning all her strength, Catherine swung the camera, the impact shattering the lens but momentarily dispersing the entity. She fell to the floor, gasping for air. David helped her up, and they made a final, desperate dash for the entrance. Behind them, the walls groaned and trembled, the building itself seeming to come alive. Doors flew open and shut, ghostly whispers filled the air. The orphans reached out with spectral hands, their voices merging into a cacophony of despair. They burst through the front door, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as they stumbled into the open air. They didn't stop running until they reached their car. They sped away from Desperation Hill, the orphanage receding into the fog, its dark secrets once again hidden. Back at their apartment, they reviewed the footage. The camera had miraculously survived the ordeal, capturing everything. As they watched, their terror reignited. In every frame, shadows danced at the periphery, and faint whispers could be heard. The final shot, just before they escaped, showed Mama's face in chilling clarity, an emaciated visage with hollow, unblinking eyes and a mouth twisted into a sinister grin. The video went viral, their subscribers mesmerized by the harrowing tale. But Catherine and David knew they had narrowly escaped a far worse fate. The legend of Desperation Hill had claimed many before them, and would surely claim more. And somewhere, deep within the bowels of the orphanage, Mama waited, her haunting lullaby echoing through the halls, ever patient for the next souls to wander into her embrace.